welcome back. Today we're going to be making a really fun Halloween card. Even though my Halloween October Eve series is technically over, I couldn't resist making more Halloween all the way through this month. So I am going to be making a Hello Bluebird themed card. They just had their September release came out right at the end of the month. And I instantly fell in love with the new Witchy Sabrina Stamp Set. So I'm starting out by stamping out my background. We're using the Country Roads background stamp. These are 6x6 stamps. I love them. I have, I think, all of the different Hello Bluebird backgrounds. They're perfect for doing a 1-layer scene card, or what we're going to do today, which is technically 2-layer, because we're going to have our scene and then we're going to die cut our images and pop them up with a little bit of foam. But I think that they're so versatile. They work for so many different seasons. I love them. So we stamped that out first with my Honeybee Stamps Intense Black ink. That's my favorite Copic coloring ink at the moment. And I'm also going to stamp out the little witch, the cat, a bat, and 2 pumpkins from the Sabrina Stamp Set. This is that new one. The background sets have been out for a while, but they did have that new Halloween mini release. I loved it. 10 out of 10. So I stamped all of those out as well. This is all on Copic Express It paper. That's my go-to Copic coloring paper. And I am going to pull out my Tim Holtz moon masks again. There is no limit to the amount of times that I can use these masks before I get tired of them. So just keep that in mind. I decided to just use a black pen to draw my moon in with a solid moon mask. And then I added a little bit of scattered straw distress ink to the moon itself, and then I went over the crater layer of the stencil with even more of that scattered straw, and this is going to let me have a really beautiful, impactful ink blended moon without ink blending any of the rest of my background. I really love combining ink blending and Copic coloring in the same scene, and this was just kind of a fun and different way to do that. So to stick with a fall kind of color scheme here, I am shading in my grass with some dark YG markers. I will try my best to have all of the colors listed down in the description below for you, as well as all of the products that I'm using. And the cool thing is that these kinds of scenes, you don't need that background set to achieve the same kind of look. You could color in and make your own hills, add your own moon, really kind of just use this as inspiration and build from there. But if you do decide to invest in a background stamp like this, just know, like I said, that you can use it all the time, right? That could be snow with little tiny pieces of grass kind of poking out, and you could slide everything up so that the leaves aren't really showing on that tree and make it look frosty, or obviously spring, summer, and fall. So I just kind of laid down my lighter green marker all over the grass area, and then started going back in with my darker markers to add in my shading and kind of emphasize the curve on that hill. I'm not always the best about laying down that lighter marker, and it really does make a huge difference when you're blending these bigger areas. I definitely don't think it's necessary for me when I'm shading in my characters or little small accents, but for the bigger areas like the sky and these fields, going in with that lighter marker first just to get the paper nice and saturated really has been making a huge difference. I have been re-watching a lot of Amy Young's lives on Facebook. She has a Facebook page called Adventures in Coloring with Amy, and she's an amazing colorist. I've learned so much from her, and that's something that I really noticed her doing on those bigger areas, is laying down that lighter color. So I highly recommend that. If you also struggle with getting a nice smooth blend on those larger areas. I decided to go with just a dirt path coming through our little country road, And then my mushrooms I kept really simple with some warm gray stalks and some dark red tops. And then I started shading in my sky, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I went with some BV markers for my sky, which is not a color scheme I usually pick. And a little bit of that scattered straw had made its way around the moon, and I didn't mind that because it created a really fun kind of haloed effect. Made it really look like it was glowing. So I started going in with these super light BV quadruple zero and BV triple zero, and then also brought in some other light BV markers. On my screen right now, they're too tiny. I honestly can't see them, but I promise I will put them in the description. My editing thing is way smaller than how it looks on YouTube. So I just started building up that color, and then the same thing here. I filled in this whole upper section with what will be the lightest shade of that part of the blend, and then went back in with the darker markers to blend over that to get the kind of softness that I was looking for. The other thing to keep in mind, the sky is not perfect. But I knew that I was going to be placing a bat up there, and that the witch's hat was going to cover part of the space up there. So I also just tried to not stress myself out too much about it, and having it be pretty good was good enough for today. So keep that in mind too. Level set with yourself. It doesn't have to be perfect. I could have sat here for an hour just messing with the sky back and forth, and I would have gotten nothing else done. So I got it to a point where I was happy, and then we just move on. And the finished product I absolutely love. So this is now where I'm building in those shadows. I really still wanted it to look like a dark night sky and not like the moon was just overpowering everything. So I kept those really dark markers right up at the top and kind of tucked into those leaves. And then I was able to start shading in the tree. And the tree I wanted to look really dramatic. So we're going to have some really deep shadows and some really light highlights on this one. So I'm going in first with this super deep brown and just kind of accentuating all of those artist drawn lines that are already here. I love how this tree is drawn so that you know exactly where your shadows need to go. There's no guesswork here. You just fill in all of those lines and then kind of build your medium shade out from there. Again, a 10 out of 10. I love these stamp sets so much. So just kind of, like I said, emphasizing those shadows. I wanted to make sure that this looked dark and spooky, and so having those intense deep colors was really going to help me with that. And I pulled in the next medium shade marker and just started kind of blending and filling in, especially creating that deeper shadow over on the right hand side where the tree kind of runs off the edge of the card. It's the side that's furthest away from the moon, so it makes sense as well that there's going to be a really deep shadow there. And when this is all done, it will help to also frame in this side of the card, which I really love. So just kind of using more of the side of the marker to really fill in some of that space, and building up some shadow at the bottom of the tree as well. So now I started to go in with a really light marker, and I liked it, but it was too big of a jump on its own. So I kind of laid that color down and then decided to go back in with another kind of lighter medium shade. So I'm still leaving some highlight space there, you can see, but definitely starting to fill in more of those edges and just leaving this lightest shade for highlights where the moonlight would kind of be picking up the most intense texture. I decided to go in with some like burnt orangey colors for my leaves. So I went in with my darkest on there, just being really careful not to get that in the moon. And then I brought in a more golden color to kind of warm that up. I love a Halloween triadic color scheme. So having the orange, the purple sky, and then that green grass really helps this to speak Halloween to me. For my little witch, I decided to go in with my kind of go-to Caucasian skin tone. So I went in with the E04, my E11, E00. I think there was a little hint of E13 in there. and then gave her some rosy cheeks, of course. For all of the black on her outfit, I decided to change things up from my normal kind of neutral or cool grays, and I went with warm grays, and I really like the more kind of vintage style feeling that the warm gray color gives this. I had a lot of fun kind of shading up her hat, making all of those deeper shadows on the underside and on the back of her pointy hat so that the light would be facing towards that moon. Just kind of keeping in mind that she's going to be facing, her face is facing towards the moon, and letting that kind of set up my shadows and my shading decisions from there. So I gave her a little color coordinated dress using those same exact warm gray markers, just working my way from darkest to lightest since these are such small spaces. I gave her some dark sleeves to her dress as well. And then her little capelet and her underskirt, we're going to bring in some fun oranges to, again, really push this as a fun, whimsical Halloween card. Little black boots seem to fit the vibe. And then I went in with YR09 as that really nice, bright, true orange shade, and started shading in, like I said, the capelet, the little petticoats under her skirt, as well as her hat band and the bow. And I'm going to bring in these same shades, I believe, for the pumpkins as well. I went and blended that out with my YR68, just leaving the tiniest little bits for highlights here and there with the YR04. I love how this kind of brings everything together and creates a nice bright pop. I decided she should have a little layered capelet, so I came back in with some of those warm grays one more time and gave her some very softly shaded white tights with my lightest warm grays. I shaded in her broomstick next, and then went in with my YR 27 and 24 markers and a little bit of whatever that golden shade was that'll be down in the description for the end of the broom. Here we go. I did bring in those same orange shades for my pumpkins just to have some nice color continuity across the image because we had so much going on with the background already. I really wanted all of these pieces to still look really cohesive. So I shaded in those pumpkins and I added some basically black to the inside of that jack-o'-lantern face. For her hair, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. That's why I left it to the end. But I decided to kind of bring in some of those same shades from the tree. And I went with just a super deep dark brown. So I grabbed my E29. Then we'll blend that out with a little bit of 27. And leaving just a little bit of white space so that I have enough room for my 25 highlight. And that'll just be enough of a change to still show you that there is a lot of texture there without it looking too kind of fake shiny. Like I said, I was working with a little more of a limited color palette just for these images specifically. So I brought in the same warm gray markers from the hat and the dress for the bat and the cat. Again, the idea was just that everything would look really cohesive and like they make sense kind of living in the same little world. And of course, the bat and the cat also got pink in their ears as well as some blush marks on their cheeks because this is Halloween whimsical familiars, little witchy familiars, and they would of course have blushy cheeks and be super cute and adorable. So I used the coordinating dies to trim those out after I added all of my little white gel pen highlights. And I did trim down my panel a little bit so that I could have this really fun, very rich background behind it. I went with this kind of textured orange from the Honeybee Stamps Spooktacular paper pad. This came out last year and I love it. It's so good. And that really warm orange just kind of warms everything up and brings it all together for me. It emphasizes kind of those leaves at the top because some of them did get trimmed off. Before I laid anything down, I just have my bat and my witch kind of sitting there loose so that I can stamp my Hey Pumpkin, which I borrowed from another Hello Bluebird stamp set. And then once I had that stamped and in place, I added foam squares to the back of my elements and got them all lined up. I'm popping everything up with these really thin black foam squares from Simon Says Stamp. I love these. I always buy the multi-pack that comes with the large and small in both black and white of this very, very thin foam. And I just decided to have the cat sitting on top of the pumpkin there. And I think that this is just so cute. I love how this whole little scene came together. It's so much easier than trying to think about masking, but it still looks nice and cohesive. I hope you enjoyed watching this. I hope you are inspired to break out your own markers and get to coloring. I also hope that you have an amazing Halloween-ish weekend, and I will see you soon. Until next time, happy crafting.